This is the diamond frequency. And this one might sting a little. But you didn't come here for comfort. You came here because something still does not make sense, even after all the work, all the breakthroughs, and all the healing, even after all the self-help books, coaching, and mentors. So let's say it clean. Most of what you think you're feeling isn't real. You're not actually feeling your sadness. You're performing it. You're not processing your grief. You're preserving it. You're not emotionally intelligent. You're emotionally rehearsed. And if that landed like a slap, good. Because it means you're still listening with your body. Your body has not been completely taken out by mimic, and your body already knows what I'm about to say next. We were all trained to believe that emotion is sacred, that to feel deeply is a gift, that crying means we're healing, rage is righteous, and that grief is growth. But what if that's the trap? What if emotion, as we've been taught to feel it, is not evidence of authenticity, but a disguise? Think about it. You cry, you journal, you express, you rage into the pillow, you call your best friend to move the energy. You share what you've been or what you're going through. You explain that you're just in a deep emotional process, and it feels honest. But is it? Or is it the same loop wearing a more spiritual mask? Now here's the thing. Emotion is real. But most of what we call emotion isn't. It's mimic. It's the nervous system echoing an old identity. It's the fascia remembering a script. It's the mimic museum in your cells. It's the body saying, we know how to be this version of you. Let's just play that again. And so you do, over and over. You're not broken. You're brilliant at performing the version of yourself that doesn't collapse. And let's get really honest. How much of your emotional experience is actually yours? How much of your sadness is inherited? Sad because that's the assigned frequency for that situation, and you didn't question who assigned it. How much of your overwhelm is rewarded? How much of your sensitivity is protection? Mimic protection, in case you look deeper, stopping you from asking more probing questions about what is really going on. And how much of what you call your truth is actually well-rehearsed ritual of staying in the room without ever being asked to leave the identity that got you there. And here's the uncomfortable part. We think that feeling means we're awake, but often we're just performing pain because we've confused expression with evolution. So let me say this straight. You're not crying to release. You're crying to stay connected to the version of you who still needs to be seen as struggling. Struggle and suffering is mimic installed into our DNA that started through mimic thousands of years ago. You're not feeling anger to alchemize it. You're feeling anger because it keeps you inside a system where fire equals presence. You're not exhausted because you've felt too much. You're exhausted because you've been holding space for a version of yourself that should have collapsed a long time ago. I know that might sound brutal, but this is not therapy. This is collapse. And collapse doesn't apologize. It just asks one question. Are you done? If you're not, that's okay. But if you are done orbiting collapse, done with having done all the things in all the ways, the meditating, the journaling, the breakthroughs, the saging, the rewiring beliefs, exposing your blocks, only to be back where you were sometimes just with a different costume, then here's what you need to know. Emotion isn't your truth. It's your feels lost disguise. The most dangerous emotion is not rage. It's sadness that feels honest, but is actually mimic, buying time. Mimic loves sadness, loves grief. Mimic loves emotional depth that doesn't change anything because it looks like self-awareness. It earns support. It gets to stay doing the work without ever becoming the field. You're not too sensitive. You're too rehearsed. You don't need to heal your inner child. You need to stop letting them run your nervous system. You don't need to express your sadness. You need to collapse the version of you who still needs sadness to feel alive. You don't need to feel it to heal it. You need to realize that feeling was mimic's final hold on your body, robbing you of your sovereignty and freedom, stealing your autonomy and the wealth of living your blueprint. Real truth doesn't spiral. It doesn't need to be processed. It doesn't pull you back into the identity that felt it. It just arrives. And when it arrives, you don't cry, you don't rage, you don't share, you collapse. And when you collapse the emotion, you collapse the entire identity it was holding in place. This is what no one in personal development or psychology will tell you. Emotions are not your truth. They are your broadcast lag. The moment your emotion becomes a process, you're no longer clearing, you're circling. And Codex doesn't circle. Codex lands, it ruptures, it speaks once, and it's over. So if you're still looping in feeling, ask yourself, am I feeling this? Or am I protecting the identity that needs to be seen feeling it? You don't need you don't need emotional intelligence. You need energetic discernment. You don't need to process sadness. You need to recognize it as mimic performing presence. You don't need to be honest. You need to be sovereign. And sovereignty doesn't cry to be understood. It doesn't rage to be heard. It doesn't perform grief to stay connected to who it used to be. It walks, it ruptures, it clears the room. I know this isn't what you were taught and what is all around us. I know your nervous system might be fighting it. I know this might even sound like I'm dismissing your emotions. I'm not. I'm naming the exact program that's kept you in the work without ever walking free. So here's what I'll say, and I'll say it straight. You're not here to feel. You're here to collapse. You're not here to be vulnerable. You're here to be voltage. You're not here to perform presence. You're here to be law. You don't process sadness. You delete the structure that needed sadness to make you real. So if you're done, if you're really done, say this out loud. I collapse the emotional identity I've rehearsed for validation. I collapse the emotional identity I've rehearsed for validation. I revoke sadness as proof of depth. I end the ritual of emotion as a substitute for movement. Now pause. And feel what's still trying to fight for its role in your body. That's mimic. And you don't owe it anything. No identity remains, only transmission. I return to silence, I return to source.